Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. I'm your host, Cesar Hernandez, and we're here to talk about El Tri's roster. El Tri's roster specifically, which was brought up earlier today, and it's going to be for the U.S. men's national team game and also the one against Panama later on this month. But before we go into the roster, before we go into our thoughts about the game, let's first say hi to our guests today. We have two tonight. It's going to be a little bit of a quick show. It's just going to be a little bit of a quick 30-minute show since Tom Marshall, actually, he only wanted to make it a 15-minute show, but I convinced him to make it about 30 minutes. Tom, I just mentioned you. Tom, how you feeling? How you doing? Thank you for making a 30-minute show as opposed to a 15-minute one that you wanted.
No worries. Oh, happy birthday for the other day. Didn't even know.
Yeah.
Feel a bit bad. Feel a bit bad now.
No worries. It was on October 30th. I'm now 43 years old. Jason.
Hey, you're looking good.
Jason over in Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Yeah, how you doing?
Town? Metropolis. Yeah.
He just updated his Twitter account, Tom. It's right there.
All right.
There you go. Exciting stuff. I'm doing well. Yeah. Bringing the Cruz Azul jersey out today. I figured the Cubs get the win last night. It's our turn next, so I'm ready.
Nice. All right, guys. So before I ask you guys some of these questions that I prepared, let me first go over the roster. I'll just really quickly go through this. So in case you didn't hear, the FMF announced the 25-man roster. So make it clear, it's 25 players. So 2 will eventually be left out of the final 23. So the goalkeepers, we have Ochoa, we have Talavera, we have Corona. In defense, which is mostly filled with center backs, we have Moreno, we have Araujo, we have Rafa, Alanis, Reyes, Salcedo, Ayala, and Layun. In the midfield, we have Guardado, we have Orbelin, we have Jonah, we have Dueñas, Herrera, Fabian, and up top, we have Tecatito, Lozano, Chicharito, Jimenez, Peralta, Gio, Vela, and Aquino. There are a couple players, like you could say, like a Gio or Dueñas, which can go from, maybe they don't have to be specific to whether it being a forward or a midfield or defender. But anywho, guys, there are a lot of people really excited about this roster, and you can see, at least from Twitter, I can see a lot of people are very excited about a lot of these names. And it makes you wonder, is this the strongest roster? Is this Osorio, is this the best that he could do? Is this the best that he can pull from the Mexican talents? And I'm going to go over to Jason. Tell us your thoughts. Is this the best that Juan Carlos Osorio could do for the Mexican national team?
Pretty much. I mean, I think you have a lot of the different opponents that people are looking for. Some of those, like the Dos Bros being back in there. Vela making a reappearance. I mean, all the people that were calling for him, you see those players back in the mix. You have all of the top-notch Europeos in there. You have some of the young contingent being represented. I mean, it's just a good, healthy mix of all the different aspects of this roster you're looking for. That I don't know. It just seems like there aren't too many just those glaring mistakes or just massive issues that come up with this roster. It just looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's most definitely an enticing and exciting roster, especially like you said, like the Velas, the Dos Santos brothers. Tom, do you agree? Do you think this is the best that he could do, or do you think there's perhaps maybe not? He did exactly go 100 for 100. He wasn't exactly an A+ roster we have right here for the national team.
Yeah, I think it's massive for Osorio. We know that there is a bit of pressure on him. The 7-0. I know we keep going on and on about it, but I mean the press down here in Mexico, the fans, I think that was a kind of line in the sand. And after that, the pressure's been increasing on him, and I think he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's not somebody who's just kind of throwing names around. I know that last month when he called up a lot of youngsters and called up a lot of players who aren't even playing with the clubs, and I think what he's trying to do is foster competition. And I think this squad that we've got now, this 25-player squad, is a fair representation of where Mexico's at as a national team. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of competition for places. It's difficult when you look at those 25 players, and you think who's going to start against the United States. It's a really difficult task because, at the end of the day, Hector Herrera, for example, not playing the best for Porto. All right, well, Jonathan Dos Santos is there, Marco Fabian's there, you can slide in, Orbelin Pineda can slide in. It's like nobody's guaranteed the place, even Chicharito up front, you've got Raul Jimenez behind him. And that's what I think is really important here. There's a lot of competition, and really, apart from what maybe Guardado and Hector Moreno. I mean, I don't think there's many guarantees of guaranteed starters in this squad.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, we'll get into this question later on, but, I was thinking about, like, which two players would I not have in the final 23? And that in itself was actually pretty tough for me. It was really difficult, like, just because, like you said, Tom, there is a significant amount of competition in his roster. There are a lot of exciting names who, as you mentioned, aren't even guaranteed starters. There are a lot of really, really enticing options, that whether it be a Tecatito, whether it be a Fabian, or whether it be a Salcedo. Guys have gotten significant amount of attention, whether it be during the past couple months or the last year, who, they still don't have a guaranteed spot in this starting 11. So that brings it to my next question. Are there certain players that are missing? Are there certain options that we think should be in this call-up that maybe Osorio might have overlooked? And I'll go back to you, Tom, on this. Which options do you think, if it doesn't have, if you believe that none were overlooked, that's fine. But, like, do you believe that there are any?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think Torres Nilo is the one that stands out, and I say that not because I think he's the greatest player in the world, but he's been such a regular under Osorio and over recent years, to be fair. And he's not there, and there's not even a left-footed left back there, which is pretty interesting. And I think from that we can kind of conclude, well, you're never 100% sure with Osorio, but I think we can look into it and think he's definitely going to play with, and the fact that you said, Cesar, there's 7 centre-backs in this squad. There's 7 players that primarily are centre-backs. I think he's going to play with 3 centre-backs in one of these games, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be against the States, because from what I've been reading and stuff, they play with 2 strikers recently, or they've been playing with 2 strikers. So if you play with 2 strikers, Mexico, Osorio will probably play with 3 centre backs, and then you don't really need that left back, and Layun can kind of play as the wing back, or the wide winger, or the wide midfielder, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's interesting. But I think it's partly to do with the opposition, and partly because there's not that much quality at the left back spot, or the right back spot, to be fair, with Aguilar out as well. So I think he's gone for the strength of the Mexican team, and I think you look at the centre backs, and I think that at least there are more options there. I'm not sure, I don't think anybody I think it's interesting the right hand side of the centre back. Who's it going to be? Reyes, is it going to be Salcedo, Ayala, or Araujo? You got 4 players there, or Rafa Marquez. You got 5 players there who could all.
Yeah, and that's interesting for you. You brought up Jorge Torres Nilo, because I thought, one of the first names that came to mind is like, oh, why don't? I mean, he doesn't have to be starting, but at least on the bench, let's bring up Dedos Lopez. But then once again, if we have that many center backs, why bring up a Dedos? Why bring up a Torres Nilo if we know, and it's pretty clear from this lineup, or from this not lineup but roster, that he's going to be probably utilizing 3 center backs. Jason, any players that you think are missing, or anything that you think that he might have overlooked?
I mean, I think you're just mostly looking at young players that you're looking at the next World Cup, getting them in the rotation, like Cesar Montes, like Eric Gutierrez, like players that you want to develop with this team for the future. But I don't think they're necessarily starters in this team. I don't think they're going to be cracking the starting 11. I mean, these are probably bench players anyway. So I don't think there are glaring absences from this roster. I think it's just mostly development and players that have this huge ceiling that you want to get into the roster as soon as possible, and maybe later in the Hex, hopefully we see those players.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm obviously I'm biased. I mean, I got the Mexico flag back here. I've got the Mexico jersey, actually the knockoff Mexico jersey, which my family bought me. It's obviously you could tell there's no Adidas patch. Nice. The tag says it was made in China, so it's definitely a knockoff that my family bought me. But this is it's a very exciting roster, and I think that it seems like there's a big consensus, at least online, from from a lot of the fans on Twitter, whether it be from my account or from the ESPN FC account. And I've seen a lot of fans who are really, really, really excited about this roster, and I feel like it's justified. I think that I think Osorio did a good job, and it was tough for me. Like I said, I thought about a Dedos Lopez, I thought about Torres Nilo, but when you think about the strength of Jason, you brought that up on Twitter earlier today, saying that right now you're playing to Mexico's strengths, and at this moment, with Paulo Aguilar being injured, it's best for him to call up all these center back options. I think it's a practical idea. I still think like maybe Cesar Montes should have gotten a call. I mean, but I'm not too bothered by it. He's still only 19 years old, and we'd love to hype up the guy, but maybe he still needs a little bit more time before he's brought into the roster. There's still plenty of time for him to be called up as well.
I think Jason said before, it's a really nice balance when you look at it.
Yeah.
Of younger players like Osorio saying, look, if you're playing well and good enough, then you can get in this squad. Carlos Salcedo, Jota Fiorentini, you start matches, you do well, you can be in my squad. Or William Pineda, if you can take games and not control games, but have so much influence on games in the Liga MX, then you can be in my squad. Irving Lozano, if you can put that Olympic and disaster behind you and score all the goals that he has for Pachuca and influence games in the Liga MX, then you can be in the squad. And it's like, and then you look at, Rafa's still there. And I know people will be like, oh, what's Rafa doing there? But at the end of the day, he's got a wealth of experience, I know he's not had a great time in Columbus before, but he's been there. He knows what's expected. And then you've got a lot of players who are in the prime, Marco Fabian, Chicharito, Giovanni Dos Santos, Vela, Herrera, Layun. It's a really, really nice mix. And I think that's another thing to mention there with his squad.
And I think now I'm just thinking about Rafa, Tom. Good job, just because that's a player who I eventually want him to make his way out of the Mexican national team pretty quickly. But that's a different conversation, and we'll save that for a different podcast. I'm going to bring on the third question. Two of the players that they tend to get a lot of attention is Giovanni Dos Santos and Carlos Vela. They're very talented options. They obviously have a lot of success. Also, Mexico's youth squads as well. And people are still a little unsure about those two players. Vela because he's been on and off in Spain, and Gio because people criticize him for moving to Major League Soccer. So my question is there space for either one of those players, whether it be one of them or both, in Mexico's starting 11? And I'll go to Jason. Jason, do you think there's space for either one of those Mexico's starting 11?
I mean, I think you got to start with the caveat that anything's possible under Osorio. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what happened. I think I think we saw Gio back in those recent friendlies, and I think there's a case to be made that he kind of put his mark on those friendlies, and that he really showed out well. So I mean, I think there's a case that he could crack that starting 11, and he has a little bit of flexibility in where he's positioned. Vela, it's harder to see. I mean, I think he is a bit more of a stretch to even be in the roster. So it's possible though. I mean, I think it's hard to crack into that line of forwards at this point with Mexico, because I think you have a few guys ahead of Vela right now. But I mean, if you're just looking at talent and overall capabilities, I mean, there's a case to be made that he belongs in the starting 11 too. I wouldn't make it, but I mean, it's possible.
No, it's a tough question. Tom, your thoughts? I mean, it is a difficult question to consider. What do you think?
I think Giovanni could well start. I mean, like Jason mentioned there, I think he played well in the recent friendlies, and I don't think it's just his performance, because we know what Giovanni Dos Santos can do and that he's a good player. But I think that the other factors are that he's worked under Osorio recently, and they appeared to get on really well. They had conversations. Giovanni was playing kind of like a false winger. He did a pretty good job. So he's recently been with Osorio, and they've had that contact, that face to face, like they're talking about what's required. So I think that pushes him a little bit ahead. And also he's playing well. I mean, he's playing well for Galaxy. Mm-hmm. And I know that there was a lot of stuff about the Copa America and him rejecting it. But if you go back to when Osorio first came in as Mexico coach, he said his challenge to Dos Santos was become one of the best players in MLS. Obviously, Osorio's not happy that that Giovanni's in MLS. I mean, that's so obvious if you listen to Osorio's interviews. He doesn't want his players to be playing there. He wants them in Europe. But yeah, the fact that he is now one of the best players in MLS, he's achieved what Osorio's challenged him and said, do that, be one of the best. And Giovanni, to be fair, has accomplished that. So I think he's in form. I mean, you want to play form players in these kind of games, and I think that that's what Giovanni is. Just another quick point about the Europe thing. This is a record for the Mexican national team.
Is it really a record? Oh, I didn't know.
It's a record. 13 players from Europe are in this team. And again, I think that's a message from Osorio. I mean, I don't think it's a kind of a purposeful, like, I'm going to pick everybody in Europe because they're, to send a message. But this is what he wants from the Mexican national team. He wants these 13 players, and then next year he wants to have 15, and the year after 17 and 20, and really to grow the amount of players that are featuring in good European teams. And I think he thinks that's what's gonna elevate this Mexican national team going forward. So the fact that Mexico have got 13 now is, I think, for Osorio, a really, really good sign. Touch wood as well, if anyone's listening there. Injuries. It's been pretty good so far.
Oh no, Tom, there's still plenty of time left until we saw those last minute injuries. Oh my God, and the list went on and on from last month and the month beforehand with the injuries. So everybody keep their fingers crossed, because that was a significant problem. But the nice thing is, as we've talked about beforehand, this is a nice roster. We have a lot of depth in this roster. I feel confident in a lot of these players. So even if one or two guys are injured, as long as it's not like a Hector Moreno or Guardado or Chicharito, I think that's also something interesting to bring up as well. Yeah, because for whatever reason there is a significant amount of injuries during the past couple months, whether it be before the game or just immediately before the game. So I think that's interesting to bring up.
I think a lot is going right for Mexico right now. I mean, you look at this roster and you're like I said earlier, this is a fair representation of where Mexico's at. There was a lot of good players. We could talk about the depth behind these 25. You know what I mean? And is it there? And blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, you look at these 25 names, and for me, I said it before, I think this squad is better than the US squad. I mean, player for player, I believe Mexico is a better team. Obviously, it's easy to say that. They have to go and show it in Columbus. It's not going to be easy, but there's the challenge. And I think, this Mexico team has to view it as a massive opportunity. I mean, there's absolutely no reason that they can't go up there to Columbus, get a result. Mexico have played 149 times in the United States this century. The US have only played 170 times or something like that. I mean, Mexico is so used to playing in the States. All these players have played in more hostile atmospheres than Columbus. It's not going to be that cold. There's absolutely no reason. I mean, let's see. Obviously, anything can happen. There's not much difference between the teams, but Mexico have to go up there and really be confident of getting something from the game.
Yeah, and before we start looking, I'm going to squeeze this in at the end, but I'm going to try to get your guys' predictions for the U.S. game. But before we get into the very end, we got about 10 minutes left. It's a list of 25 players, so 2 are going to have to leave. 2 are going to have to, as Naib told me earlier today, they're probably, Araujo was telling him that they're probably cheering for Mexico up in the stands. I'm not sure how happy they'll be kicked out of the roster, but have to be cheering in the stands. But guys, if you were to have to take out 2 players from this list of 25, I could go through it again if you would like me to, but who would those 2 be?
Gio and Vela. Just imagine. I'll go on, Jason. You go.
All right, Jason, you go.
I think you probably have to say Alanis. I think it's just kind of the last man out, and that the center back pairings back there. And I probably Orbelin just on. I'd like to keep him in that roster, but I think kind of seniority probably bumps him off the list. I think there's a case to be made for Peralta there too, but I feel like he's probably going to be kept around just to that consistency and the kind of the elder statesman on the team. I could see just Orbelin kind of being the young player let go.
No, and I actually, when I was looking at that too, I was like, who is the guy who hasn't played a single Liga MX minute this season? I guess it's Alanis, and there's already a bunch of center back options, so he was a clear guy to take up. But who knows? Maybe he'll do well during training. Maybe Osorio really like him. And then my other is actually I think it might be. I'm gonna say it's gonna be Aquino, just because of all the different options that you have at the winger positions. I'm saying that a Tecatito, Lozano, and a Gio or Vela are gonna sneak past. I'm assuming that a Gio will play as perhaps one of the wingers in that, whether it be a 3-3-3-1 or a 4-3-3. I think Gio is still a little bit above an Aquino, so I think that's who I'm going to say. I'm going to say it's an Alanis and Aquino, but that is an interesting point with the Orbelin, because I do like Orbelin a lot. But as you mentioned, there is a lot of players in that midfield who have more experience with the national team. So that's an interesting point. Tom, if you were to guess two, who would they be?
I mean, I disagree a bit about Alanis. I think that apart from Moreno, he's the only one with that characteristic of being left-footed.
Yeah.
The only other left-footed defender. So, I mean, I see it between Ayala and Araujo.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think Reyes plays. He can play defensive midfield or centre back. You know, you've got Salcedo who's been playing fullback. So look out for that as well. I mean, if you're looking for a fullback, Salcedo's been playing there.
In Italy, this isn't like some Liga MX. He's been playing for Serie A, for Fiorentina. He's been playing as right back. So
it's something to watch out for that as well. And again, I think Ayala and Araujo are the two players who aren't they don't have that other option. So I think probably one of those two, and then I don't know. Aside from that, Jonathan Dos Santos or Pineda, depending on how they train. That again, because I don't know. I can't see him playing in too many positions. I know Dos Santos, could play holding midfielder, but I don't think Osorio is ever going to use him as a holding midfielder. And then it could be one of the strikers. Again, I think Oribe, Chicharito, and Raul Jimenez, probably, the number nines. I mean, they're all number nines, and it's like you've got three for likely one position. Whereas you look at Vela or Giovanni, who could both play in a kind of central striking role, and you think that Vela and Giovanni have got that flexibility as well. Even Tecatito, who's played there before, as a number 10. So I'd say one of those three, but it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to predict.
Although if I remember correctly, Osorio might have watched. I mean, I assume He's more than likely this very studious man. He probably did watch that last game of the CONCACAF Cup against the U.S. And he probably saw that line with it, Chicharito, Jimenez, and Peralta. If I remember correctly, those were the three guys who started up top. So I wonder, because I was actually considering whether it be Jimenez or Peralta would be left off, but I do wonder if he actually has watched that and saw how effective that formation was, and if that's something he might potentially use, something that Tuca did.
I mean, the only thing that makes me think he's not going to do that is the amount of wingers in there as well. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would be savagely bold to go to Columbus and just start three strikers. But I mean, I don't know. Like we've said a few times here, we don't know. I mean, Osorio, I think, is confident, and you don't know what he's got up his sleeve. I mean, to be fair, Tuca Ferretti, nobody in the world thought that Tuca, who's known as this kind of controlling coach, would unleash Jimenez, Chicharito, and Peralta. Last year. I mean, it was incredible. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant tactically.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch. Oh man, that was a lot. Hopefully, we'll get a similar result on November 11th. Guys, we got about 5 minutes left. Let's hear your predictions, just for fun. So, Jason, what do you think is going to be the final result for Mexico against the U.S.? I would say Panama, but we'll save that for another show. And also, I don't know if anyone's really focusing on the Panama match just yet. So, Jason, Mexico versus the United States. What is going to be? Give us a scoreline, whether it be a scoreline. You can even say anything about a certain player, starting 11, anything. Prediction for that game.
I find it a really difficult one to predict. So I feel like with both Mexico and the U.S. right now, I don't feel like you have a lot of ideas about what they're going to come out and play like in Columbus at this point. I mean, I think both Mexico and the U.S. are a bit of transition with the rosters and coming off some strange losses and some turnover in some positions. And I think there's just you don't really know how Mexico's going to come out and play. They're going to play that cohesive unit. Is the midfield going to look like garbage again, as it has? What are we going to see out of Herrera and Guardado? Are they going to be themselves, or are we going to get that watered down, scary version? And with the U.S., I think they have a lot of the same issues in defense. Is a lot of question marks. So many new players coming into that midfield. They have a lot of options, so a lot of different ways they can go. Predicting this game is tough. So I'm just going to throw a draw out there. I think there's going to be some goals. I think Mexico is going to bring enough firepower to score in Columbus, and I feel like they're going to bring a little more, I don't know, the mental fortitude. I think that's the thing that for Mexico that's been lacking in Columbus, because I feel like they've been the better team so often being in Columbus and haven't gotten a result. So I think they're going to score, but I think Mexico, I worry about, with those three center backs, I worry about the speed coming up the wings from the U.S. So I could see conceding a goal or two as well. So if I was to guess, and I feel no confidence in it, but I would say 2-2.
It's it. All right, 2-2 from Jason. All right, Tom, your prediction.
I go 1-1.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's much between the teams. You know, yeah, I think it'll be a good game. Obviously, the atmosphere is going to be really good. You know, I hope Mexico get a result because I think that, I don't know, I like what Osorio's trying to do, and I like this squad. I think that it's shown that, you know, out of all the criticism that he's had, at the end of the day, he knows this is the best squad. I mean, you know, he knows what he's got. And I think before tonight, you know, in the September games, which Mexico were already qualified for the hexagonal, you know, and the October games in which they weren't really real games. You know, they were like kick-arounds, like scrimmages, as you say up there. But, you know, I think now when it comes down to it, he's got this squad, and I think now is the time to, you know, to show that what Mexico's made of, really, and especially with the Chile game, to show that game is definitely in the past, that, you know, they've got a squad with 13 players playing in Europe, and that, you know, partly because of that, they can go up to a place like Columbus, which isn't the most frightening place in the world to go, and get a result. I think if they can get a result there, even if it is just a draw, they've got plenty to build on moving forward.
Yeah, I wish I had a different answer, but to be honest, everyone who's watched right now, I'm also going to do a 1-1 draw. I'm going to follow suit. Jason said 2-2. Tom said 1-1. I'm going to say 1-1 as well. As Tom said, I don't think there's I would say Mexico is a little bit better right now. You look at that roster; some of those midfield and attacking options are fantastic. But I still think that there's something about the Columbus which will kind of invigorate those the U.S. men's national team like players against Mexico, and it's also difficult in a match like between the U.S. and Mexico. It's difficult to really predict what will happen between those two teams. You know, those two teams which have a lot of animosity. Those two teams which have had a storied past. So I don't know. I think I'm gonna go for a 1-1. Yeah. So that'll be, and I think that'll be obviously after the history of also said on the last 4 World Cup qualifying matches, and also the 2002 World Cup, but I still don't think that exists. I don't know what that happened. That's just something that doesn't exist in my mind. But the last 4 World Cup qualifying matches in Columbus at Matt Free Stadium, Mexico has lost 2-0 against the U.S. And I think after all that, a 1-1 is not a bad result at all for the Mexican national team. So fingers crossed for that. We'll see if it happens. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jason. Any final thoughts about Mexican national team? It can even be Liga MX if you guys want to be. But is there anything before we head out? And I guess I could continue celebrating my belated birthday beer that I got from earlier this week.
Go, nope. Jason.
No, Jason, Tom. Jason, anything about Cruz Azul? You guys, actually, Cruz Azul still has a small chance of finishing in the top 8. It's very, very small, but there is still a chance. No?
I think that's just made him freeze.
Dude, I mentioned Cruz Azul, and he just no. I can understand it, man. No worries, I understand that. Tom.
Yeah, no, I mean the league. Let's see what goes on this weekend. I'm interested to see if Monterrey can get a result, because as bad as they've been, if they can sneak into those playoffs, which he's still got a decent chance of doing, I don't think you can write him out at all. And apart from that, I think I just can't wait for Columbus now. I think it's, all the attention's on Columbus. I think it's, for me, one of the best rivalries in world football.
Yeah.
I think it's a fascinating rivalry. I think that in some ways, both teams kind of portray themselves in a certain way, or not teams, but both nations, whatever, as the underdog in this game. And it's fascinating. I mean, I think Mexico, because the David and Goliath thing, that US is this superpower on the world stage, and Mexico thinks we've got to beat him at football. We have to beat him at football. And then the US side, there's that underdog kind of like, we're not really, we came to soccer late and we've only just got going, and Mexico's this big power in the region. And so for me, it's absolutely fascinating, the different strands of this rivalry. And, like I said, I think it's about time Mexico go up there and, change the story.
Change the story. That's what Juan Carlos Osorio said earlier to you in your interview, which we'll see eventually enough for ESPN FC. Jason, yeah, eventually, hopefully Monday. Jason, wrap up the show. Any final thoughts? Any Liga MX, Mexican national team?
Yeah, not really. Just excited about what's coming. I mean, I think we've just been building to this, for looking at this game for so long, and we're finally a week out. So it's just exciting that I think a lot of what is going to come forward might be determined by this one game for Mexico. I mean, I think Tom mentioned earlier just that, so much for Osorio and his plans and what he has going forward, which still could really work out in Mexico's favor. If he is afforded the time, and in order to be afforded the time, he probably needs a result.
I like that. It could potentially foreshadow, what the rest of this hex will. Well, if he goes through the rest of the hex, I doubt he will. Guys, thanks so much. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jason. Thank you to all the viewers out there for taking part of the chat. I actually didn't get a chance to look at the chat today because I'm irresponsible, and that's why Weasel is usually in charge. And we'll be back next Monday.
They're only talking about some police or something or so.
All right, thanks guys, and I'll see you around.